All right, and we're live. This is the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carbajal, as always, with Matthew Hawkins, and here we are late Friday on the eve of UFC 249. We were playing it safe, making sure nothing didn't fall apart, so we definitely got something to talk about. What's up, Matt? How was your week?
It's been nice having something to look forward to. Been on pins and needles. Not sure exactly how everything was going to unfold. Who knew that during a pandemic, apparently the card would hold? We can't get a card to hold when it's 95 degrees and no disease in Vegas.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we got a worldwide pandemic, and the 12 fight card seems to have held up with only one fighter missing weight, but the fight continuing. But other than that, it's been a hot week here in Southern California, and
Lucky
looking
you.
back to getting on normal life track here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's far from normal here on the East Coast. Obviously, our numbers with the COVID-19 are bigger and all that bullshit. But yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? It is what it is. So obviously, leading into the fight week, as the sport trickles back to some kind of normalcy, there's news here and there. So we'll talk about that stuff before we get into our main card picks. I know the card is stacked, and we could probably do the whole card, but I mean, we'll probably talk about some fights. I know you had some stuff up that you wanted to talk about from the prelims. I mean, the whole card is stacked, but leading into it, obviously, you know, Florida.
God bless Florida at this point, huh?
Dude, did you know that? I mean, I don't know how true it was, but Helwani put it out there that the pro wrestlers from AEW and the UFC fighters are staying in the same hotel, and I thought that the UFC said they were going to have free reign of the hotel on their own. I don't know how true that is though, but I mean, I watched AEW, and that was fun.
I didn't even know AEW was based out of Florida right now, but I guess everything
Yeah,
is pretty much
they put
Florida,
an
huh?
event on at some football arena or something, and it
Hmm.
was pretty crazy. So, yeah, man. The the week was as a sport was waking up. Obviously the news started flowing in. I don't know if you caught before we get into the fights. I mean, the talking about fights in the future. Stipe Miocic had responded to Daniel Cormier, like calling him out for being apprehensive about signing up for the heavyweight title fight. I don't know if you saw his response to it. I wrote about it over at mymmanews.com, but he was kind of just like, like, dude, I can't even train right now, and I'm a first responder. Like, why don't you just wait until we get back to normal? So I kind of agreed with him. I don't know what your take on it was.
Well, if you can't train, yes, that's a bit of an issue. I I feel like we're seeing MMA fighters training though. I mean, I get that the gyms aren't open like normal gyms are open, but
Mhm.
I mean, and this is just obviously what I see on Twitter. I mean, I'm assuming that the fighters that are fighting this weekend and during the week and next weekend and the weekend after that are all training. Um,
And they got to be training like, you know, I know they're not just hitting treadmills and you know what I mean, like I don't know if you saw that interview with Justin Gaethje towards the end of last week where he said he had Benil Dariush and X, Y, and Z, and he was like, and we're all quarantined together, and I'm like, that's not your normal situation. I highly doubt. So I mean, you got a camp going, and why wouldn't you if you're gonna fight for a title, and you're, I mean, we got to remember the minds that we're dealing with when it comes to these competitive athletes. I mean, if a title is on the line, they're both willing to go for it. I mean, whether you want to call it intelligent or not, they're going to do what they got to do, even if they got to make it look like they're training on their own. So I agree with you. I think they are training, but
yeah, I mean, I get Miocic is being a first responder. He has another job and another priority, but I feel like um, I think it would be fair to say that the UFC is probably how he makes his living, as far as living the way he lives, probably pays this for his house and everything else. So when your boss calls and says we're going back to work,
Yeah.
um, I think certain things have got to be met. Now, obviously, if his gym's closed and he can't train, that is an issue.
Hmm.
I guess my biggest issue was I believe he said his gym doesn't open for like 2 more weeks, and there's no way that he's fighting in August. And I'm just like, are we? He needs a 16-week camp. I mean, let's let's we you can't fight in August. Seriously, I mean, that gives you another 3 months of training after your gym opens. So I guess that's my thing. He's I mean, one of the knocks on him is he hasn't been super active
Hmm.
since he's kind of become a world champion. I don't think people like the just not ducking of Cormier, but the kind of sidestepping of him in a way of talking about Ngannou and Rosencheck and um, or Rosenstruck and
Rosenstruck.
Rosenstruck,
I
and
don't,
yeah, it's one of those three.
yeah.
And I guess I think that's where I kind of come off on it. He's the heavyweight champion of the world, and I've stated my stance on the heavyweights, and so you've got to have a fighting heavyweight champion. And I'm honestly surprised that they didn't make the Ngannou Rosenstruck fight this weekend an interim heavyweight title fight. They initially had the Amanda Nunes, I think, was on this card, so they initially had 3 title fights
Yeah.
anyway. I'm kind of surprised they didn't make it an interim one to maybe kind of force the hand, but then again, that kind of pushes Cormier out of it a little bit. But
Yeah.
it also, in a sense, brings Cormier in if Miocic is.
Yeah, and I think Dana White has been pretty I think Dana White has been pretty adamant about trying to do Cormier a favor, on his last run of his career here because of I mean, he's always commented on how Daniel Cormier has done everything that the UFC has asked him to do, including giving up his title, the light heavyweight title, so that John Jones could win it back, and somebody that he hates. Which I feel like that's kind of a big company guy move that is probably owed a, did done a favor and he's owed a favor. So that's probably why Dana White said that. What the hell is what's Yuri talking about over here?
Yuri chiming in. How long was Dave Benito's fight camp? Well, I'm guessing for UFC 5 against Abel Cancion and Oleg Tiktarov, about 2 days. UFC 6 for Oleg Tiktarov, probably another 3 days. And then his fight with Pat Smith in New Japan, I imagine he got that on about 48
Cheers,
hour
Yuri.
notice as well. So I would say Dave Benito's entire career fight camp, if you discount just drinking beers at a Canadian bar, is probably about 7 days.
Mm.
So yeah, but that's a different world of fighting back then. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
and the bare knuckle days. Speaking of bare knuckle, we're just kind of hopping around here before you, like you said, before we get in the car, it just hopped into my mind. Apparently, BKFC offering Mike Tyson 20 million
Yeah.
to fight for them at 53 years old. I don't know what your take is on that. I'd like to meet the man that would step into a ring with Mike Tyson bare knuckle, though.
Listen, I mean, I agree with you first, but the other thing is though, like you got to remember these guys like that, though they only know how to work out the way that they trained. You know what I mean? So in this day and age of social media, I mean, you're not gonna catch me doing it, but unless I have a nicer place to live and shit, that because I want people to see this freaking rat trap I live in with me throwing, rolling around on the floor and doing my solo training and stuff like that. But it's like if that's the way you know how to exercise, he's probably just trying to keep in shape. I mean, he's older. He probably had a doctor visit that was like, "Hey, man, you need to do something about this." So he was like, "All right, well, I only know how to do this." And he's getting back in shape. I know he mentioned himself that he was thinking of taking a fight. So I don't know. I mean, freaking Tyson Fury's father was trying to say he wanted to fight him too. I'm like, come on, like, what's up with the old guy fights? Like, I mean, you don't want to. 50's kind of up there. I mean, 40's kind of up there for fighting, especially when you're looking at at something that you're going to charge money for. I mean, like let's back it up a little bit. And for bare knuckle, I mean, don't forget, if you look back to Mike Tyson, like when he was in his prime and active, and he used to get in trouble with throwing TVs and knocking dudes out in the street. Those reports always came with him breaking his hands too. You know, the thing about boxers is that because they use their hands so much, um, it's they wrap them up, the gloves and the 16, 20 ounce gloves or whatever they train with. So it gets to the point that it's dangerous, like so if he goes bare knuckle, look at Paulie Malignaggi. He came from the world of boxing, and his hands broke in the first round, I think, against Artem Lobov. So I mean, if he's gonna do it's got to be like some celebrity boxing thing or something like that. That's my opinion.
Well, I think first of all, I guess I heard also that Evander Holyfield is coming out of retirement at 57. So I think that possibly works out something there if they can get sanctioned for 53-year-old versus a 57-year-old. They do, Tyson Holyfield 3. Um, I guess I get amused by the fact that there's literally a 4-second clip of a dude throwing 3 punches, um, albeit quick and powerful.
Hmm.
But it's literally a 4-second clip, and all of a sudden we're talking about ESPN and these places are talking about him fighting Tyson Fury. Um, and stuff like that. So I'm just that's what's crazy. I mean, his speed and his punching power was never the problem. His you know, I somewhat cardio and size against these giant heavyweights is what
Hmm.
ended up leading to some of his losses at the end of his career. So
I mean, and he looked. I mean, it looked dangerous. I mean, the dude holding for him looked like he might have probably had to ice his own hands after that. But I
that
mean,
was Rafael Cordero. Did you see that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, but I'm just saying, it's like it's you know, I see where the talk is coming from, because the way he moves. But I mean, anyone that's done any kind of fighting, and I mean, it's different when you're hitting the pads. When someone's hitting back, it doesn't look as pretty. But it's nice to see that he still has the muscle memory and the movement and stuff like that. I mean, God bless him. I mean, I would prefer him not do it. I mean, he's 53, right? 53.
53. I don't
Yeah.
mind if he can if he's healthy and he passes the medicals and he wants to do a boxing match against another older dude. I'm okay
Mhm.
with it. I don't. I think it would be a tragedy to put him in there with somebody like Tyson Fury or somebody
Yeah.
anywhere near their prime at this point. I think that would just be a disaster waiting to happen. And I think we all know how that unfolds. I mean, we've seen it throughout the history of fighting. It gets hyped up and then you see the legend, the old guy, get crumbled by a by a younger stud in their sport. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to see that, but I did think it was interesting. BKFC out of where God's name we talk about World Series of Fighting, PFL, where they got their money. I can't even know where. You know, I imagine that money train goes quite a ways back there for BKFC. But yeah,
Hey,
that was just
you
one of the other things this week.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't this week. It was kind of towards the end of last week. But did you see Kayla Harrison talking about she might have to walk on a PFL if they're going to take off a whole season? I mean, I thought that. I mean, they made a lot of her. I mean, she trains with Amanda Nunes. She's not going to. They're two separate entities when you talk about their skill in MMA. She admitted that herself, but excuse me, she's just want drinking beer on a live podcast is not good for you. Makes you gassy. But she was saying that you know she's trying to grow as a mixed martial artist, and if she can't, she has to do that by fighting, and competing. And I agree with her. Obviously, the pandemic is putting that on hold, but her point was, obviously, with this weekend and the UFC making a comeback, she was like, "Listen, if other people are going to come back and you're going to take off the whole year, then I need to start shopping around." And it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, she said that because she said that the CEO Peter Murray was kind of like, "Well, let me see what I could work out for you." But it's like, well, then why did you call off the whole year? Remember, like I was saying, like they usually get going the end of May, beginning of June. They could have done closed off event. They don't make that much money off of gates.
Yeah. Uh, I did see some of those comments. I didn't read too much into them. I guess my initial take would be probably if I'm PFL might be kind of a fu. We basically handed you a check for $1 million. We made a division for you. Um, we've made you a poster girl for the organization. You haven't really beaten anybody that anybody's ever heard of yet, and you just got a check for $1 million, like what, 3 months ago, uh,
Yeah,
on New Year's
January.
Eve. So yeah, 5 months ago. Um, I don't know. I mean, I would be pretty frustrated if that's what you were hearing from her. Like I said, considering that situation. But as far as her career goes, I get that. I have no idea what her contract situation is, but I feel like that's the kind of stuff that you need to think about when you're signing these contracts. People need to build a name for themselves, but um, where's she going to go fight? Is she going to make 145 pounds? I mean, she's never has yet, right? She's all of her fights have been at 155.
Yeah, and
Uh,
she's that was one of the things that came up to me because she's it's like if she shops around, and I think I wrote that in my I wrote about it at my MMA news, and I think I closed with that because she said she doesn't really want to cut to 145. She liked being the innovator and being the for the 155-pound division for women. And I was kind of like, well, then if you're gonna do that, because nobody else is really thinking about doing 150, PFL did it, like you said, PFL did it for you. And I mean, to try to be unique in their own unique brand with the tournaments and the season and all that. So it makes sense. But I mean, obviously, it doesn't look like UFC and Bellator have tossed around the idea of making a women's lightweight division. It seems like featherweight is the lightest they want to go, is the heaviest they want to go. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, she's it's one of those things. It's like if you really want to fight, then you're gonna have to cut them 10 pounds. And if she really is gonna shop around, then I mean, I feel like Bellator would be the first ones to be like, you know what, we'll come here, we'll see what you got. They'll put her on an undercard, have her fight on the YouTube prelims and see what happens. But because obviously, I mean, if her goal is ultimately to get to the UFC, you know, outside of the PFL, I mean, she's definitely got that dojo team loyalty that she's not, because her and Amanda Nunes train together. So, she's not going to try to step on her toes at 145. Kind of like Cormier and Velasquez.
Yeah, I mean, I just think she needs to be careful with what she says publicly at this time. She's treading kind of in, like you said, it's interesting waters because, uh, we got a Nunes Spencer 145-pound women's title fight, I believe, in early June, kind of tentatively scheduled right now with UFC. Uh, if Nunes wins that fight, uh, hell, no matter who wins that fight, that division might not be around. I mean,
Mhm.
we're playing a round robin with like 3 fighters right now, um, and if Nunes wins, I guess in theory you could have Megan Anderson fighter since they haven't fought
Mhm.
yet. But we've already seen Spencer Anderson. We'll have basically completed the round robin, and I don't she's talking. She's going to end up finding herself on a Bellator prelim if she's not careful, because the UFC could easily get rid of the 145. Bellator,
Mm.
I think if she signed with Bellator, I think she would probably more likely be a main card. I think they would promote the hell out of her because she already has an established name. She's been on ESPN.
Yeah.
She's a bit of a known. Uh, I think she should keep her mouth shut a little bit. Think she should try to get PFL to ship her off to fight some quiet fights, maybe in Japan. Um, maybe not even
Mm.
with Ryzen, but just with some offshoot organization, or somewhere where she can just kind of quietly have some fights, um, and
Mm.
and not be so promoted. And even if she were to lose, the mass public wouldn't really catch on to it. It would just be, go collect a small paycheck, and if this is about your career and advancing as a fighter, then you're not going to get a $500,000 paycheck. Um, Fighting anywhere right now, you're not going to make anywhere near the amount of money you made in PFL. So you might want to keep it a little bit on the hush hush right now until
Yeah.
you figure out what you can do. But you know, she's she's an Olympian, she's a world
I think it was
champion.
more just. I think she's just. Yeah.
You know,
And I think it's just her being competitive and being upset. I mean, a lot of fighters, it wasn't just her. I know a few fighters like Ray Cooper and a few fighters were kind of just like, yo, like look at the dime they dropped on Rory McDonald. Now you got him sitting out a year. What's his name? Lawthane that was on the contender series that the UFC didn't sign. PFL picked him up right away, and now it's like, okay, dude, I promised you guys, I promised you guys my time, and now you're just going to drop a whole year because of a pandemic that might be over, or at least, I mean, the one thing, before I even, it kind of ties into it. One thing about this weekend is that, everyone's knocking Dana White about being first and coming back and safety and all that. But the one thing, that, I know, like, even boxing is doing, because I was on the Last Round podcast. Daniel Zalivar, who's been on this podcast, he co-hosts that. And they had me on to talk about, because combat sports as a whole is keeping a close eye on this weekend. I mean, if Dana White is willing to be the guinea pig on putting closed off events, with all these kinds of restrictions on, and I know it's expensive, because that's one thing he's commented on a lot, of how expensive it is to do this with all the COVID testing and stuff like that. But if he pulls it off, then he's laid out a way for this level of combat sports to go forward. And I know we've had Submission Underground, but they're not hitting each other, and things like that. So, I don't know, man. I mean, it's definitely, it would definitely make you wonder if you were signed with someone that says, I'm not going to do anything for a whole year, and that's how you make your living.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that side. I guess part of me also says, well, that's kind of what you signed up for with PFL. I mean, I didn't hear Ray Cooper really fighting for the people that he beat in the round one of the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
that haven't really fought in a year. That didn't make the playoffs, that are still signed to PFL, that we're under contract for another 6 months while he had his playoff fights and stuff like that. So I mean, I feel like that's the pros and the cons when you're signing with an organization that does seasons. I guess that would partially be my argument. I don't know how the contracts work. I know a bunch of them got released. So we'll see if that works out for those fighters. I'm always in the sport of, with the amount of organizations we've seen uh, disappear,
Mm-hmm.
and how things shift so quickly. I'd be careful to bite the hand that's feeding you, especially some of these guys that just collected, in theory, $1 million paychecks. I mean, that's what we're told. Maybe, I don't know. I'm assuming they got $1 million out of it, but you know, it just it comes off a little bit bitchy to me to be publicly complaining about your employer. If this is going on behind the scenes and they're totally ignoring you, that's one thing. But if the first thing PFL hears is Kayla Harrison talking to or some writer from MMA Weekly or something like that, then
She did the interview with Brett Okamoto at ESPN,
well, there you go.
so
I
it's
mean,
on the same network that they're on.
okay, yeah. I mean, so who knows how that works? But anyways, that'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'd like to see her fight Cyborg, but I don't want to see Cyborg. I don't want to see us getting into the 155 right now. If we start getting to 155, maybe
No, no, like, I would think, I mean, if based on her, from watching the interview, and speaking to her the few times that I've spoken to her, and I think she's probably, even though she said in the past she doesn't want to do it, it's not like you can't change your mind. I feel like she'd cut the 10 pounds and at least make a go of it if the opportunity and the money was right and all of that. I mean, she seems like a smart, career, person, as far as, like, making decisions for herself. So, I mean, she did bring up a good point, though. One thing she did say was, like, it's not me that's in breach of contract, it's them. They promised me, I forget how many fights, at least 2 fights a year, and now they're saying they're not giving me anything. So, I mean, in that sense, she's right. So,
yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know the behind the scenes stuff. If that's how her contracts worked out, um, they should be able to give her some money to hold her over if that's the case. If she wants to go fight elsewhere, then I mean, I don't imagine you could write up something where you're not going to send her UFC where UFC is going to lock her in. You might not even send her to Bellator, but there's got to be some kind of co-promotion with some organization that you can do where if it's all about keeping busy and just making some money, then
I
that's the case.
know. Oh, talk. You just mentioned this, uh, she was talking about, like, making her return to combat sports a boxing match, when Scott Coker kind of shut that down, earlier this week. The article's up at MMAJunkie.com, where they quoted him saying that he was like, no, I'd like to see her fight here first, defending that title. I spoke with her number one contender, Arlene Blenko, when this whole pandemic thing started, who pretty much expects to face Cyborg when when they get going at Bellator. So I don't know. I was kind of relieved to hear that. I don't mind the MMA boxing crossovers, but I actually hate the term crossover too, because it is a crossover because it's a MMA fighter crossing over into boxing, but it's still a boxing match, so it's kind of like, what are we really getting excited about? Of course, the boxer is going to win the boxing match.
Yeah, I'm. She's the champ of Bellator now, so
Mm-hmm.
she has to defend the title. That's the difference. If she was a contender, had she lost her last fight, there'd be maybe some more options. But I don't. Chris Cyborg is another one who's complained about being inactive in the past too. When she was with the UFC, she was constantly complaining about being inactive there. So you're the champ now, Bellator. Why don't you become active? And I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
huge Chris Cyborg fan, but that's just the truth. Between what she's made public or her publicists have made public. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, shoot. I guess the only other thing that kind of jumped out today was the kind of Dana White's reaction to the media. Uh, he kind of, he's been taking hits at the media the last few weeks.
Yeah.
The media hasn't really held back, kind of taking hits at him. And he kind of went after him today about basically saying that, you got a bunch of MMA writers and media members that are kind of seem to be working behind the scenes to try to upend him getting events going. And, I mean, I we're not always here to defend Dana White, but I kind of feel what he's saying a little bit. I think that if your job is to cover a sport, it's not your
Mm-hmm.
job. You can say what you believe and stuff. We've kind of said it on this show. We didn't think the last event would happen. We didn't see the hurry in it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, we've always said that if they can get it going, we're going to be the first ones to be watching it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I don't know what you would do if they said, "Hey, Matt, get on a plane, fly to Florida. We want you to cover this event." I'd be there. Um, it's just what I
If
would.
yeah, I mean, then you get people that are talking about journalistic integrity and stuff like that. But I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, if you're full, like everyone that's there covering it does this full time. So their flights, their room, it's getting paid for. Who's there? Junkie fighting. The schmo for some reason makes a lot of money covering it. You know what I mean? I mean, not to knock him. I actually like the schmo. He asks good questions, even though he does it in his goofy sort of way. But I mean, they're all there. It's their full time thing to do it. Um, but I mean, like you said, he makes a point, because it's like if there's no sport going on, then there's nothing for them to cover, and then they have to worry about where they're going to make their money. And today when he addressed the media, he kind of like ranked like NBA, NFL, and all that stuff. He was like, we're still at the bottom. He's like, if the places, even if you work for a big spot, the places they start cutting folks off, it's gonna start with MMA first, because I mean, you and I both know the sport's been fighting an uphill battle for a long time. So, I mean, I've never tried to be Woodward and Bernstein when it comes to this sport. You and I have both been real adamant about, like it's two half naked people fighting in the cage. Like, let's fucking lighten it up a little bit. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I of course you want to ask the questions about safety and travel and things like that, especially during a pandemic. Yes, it would be. I still think they should wait, but again, like I said about when I was on the last round, everyone's watching to see what happens. You're not gonna know if you don't try. Dana White kind of commented on that, and I'm not dick riding him or nothing over what he said. It's hard not to agree with. I mean, you have to try something. I think we've all been, especially here in my location, we've all been locked up long enough that it's like, listen, how long do you want to? How long are we supposed to sit with our hands in our pockets? So I'm not gonna blame him for trying, spending the money to try, because he keeps talking about how expensive it is. But the thing is, if he pulls it off, if nothing horrific happens, if nobody gets sick, and God forbid, the horrible stories we hear about what's going on out there happens, then maybe he did something right. I guess that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's about doing anything right. I just think it's from the media members' perspective. It's like, I mean, I was shocked when I saw how many media members were there. I mean,
Yeah.
the reality is that these guys have all interviewed all these fighters probably 50 times up until the last couple of weeks. Um, you've covered weigh-ins before. It's not like there's a whole lot of info. You're literally either just taking some photos or writing down what they weighed and reporting it to your people.
Yeah,
I mean, literally the
yeah,
same thing you could do if you're watching a stream online for the most part. And I'm not trying
yeah.
to downplay what they do, but they could write about the event watching it on TV almost really similar to them sitting cage side. So it's like to have to just be complaining nonstop about, oh, this is crazy, this is crazy, and then to see a picture of the media and see that there was, a couple dozen it looked like media members there. It's like, well, these people were quickly to jump on a plane and go cover this event when they've
Hmm.
been kind of bad mouthing it. So I don't know. I just hope it goes down smooth. I hope we get fights. I hope everybody's
Speak,
healthy and
yes.
it works
Speaking of
out.
like covering the see, but the thing is, there's people. If it's going to go on, people are going to want to know. And I have to give a shout out to I don't know if he's Nolan's boss or whatever, but John Morgan over at MMA Junkie. He's doing a blog and everything, and documenting the testing and showing photos, putting photos on his Twitter of like the setups and the sanitation procedures and stuff like that. So if you really want to see they've been doing leading up to tomorrow night, Saturday night, then make sure you're following John Morgan from MMA Junkie, because he's been doing a hell of a job, man. I mean, and that guy's got family, he's got a kid at home and stuff too that he's got to obviously look out for himself and make sure he comes home healthy. They tested him. They showed the whole thing with the swab in the nose and stuff like that. So I mean, he'll know if he. I mean, he'll probably quarantine himself and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, that's just a side note as to leading up to what we're about to talk about with the UFC 249.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting with a bang here. Hell of
Hmm.
a card. We've kind of hinted at it. We haven't really broke it down the last couple weeks because we've been a little gun shy about things unfolding. But
Yeah.
uh, from start to finish, the prelims start tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern time on regular ESPN TV, and they run for 4 hours. So instead of the normal 2 hour prelim that we would generally get, crossed over with a couple hours on ESPN Plus or Fight Pass or however the heck they do the early ones now. Now it's just straight up 4 hours on
Yeah.
ESPN. So that's a positive. Then at 10 o'clock Eastern, it goes to the pay per view for the last 5 fights of the night uh, through ESPN Plus, and we've been through that route. But that's if you've ordered it, you know how. If you never have, good luck. Um,
You
you
want to know
know,
what's funny? I had so many of my training partners. I don't know why they think I know. I mean, they don't. Not all of them listen to this podcast. Even we've had one of them on here, but yeah, Simon didn't message me, but like other training partners were like, "Yo, how do you order it?" And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a fan of it. I don't know. Go find a YouTube video of how you order UFC pay-per-views now, but either way, I mean, before we get into it, though, man, I think it bears repeating. I said it on the last round podcast. I know I've said it a few times on here. This whole thing should be on regular ESPN. There's jack shit on. I know they have to do their money grab, but come on, bro. Come on, son.
yeah, I would have done it a little differently too. I mean,
Yeah.
there's other options. Even if you're going to have a pay per view, I would have done like tonight. I would have had like a 10 fight, like fight night, basically, kind of leading into it. Um, because a lot of people, I just don't think are going to know it's happening. They're not watching sports right now because there's no sports to watch. So you're not seeing the ads, you're not seeing it. So I just think that that's going to be an issue. But the numbers are going to be lied about. That's the bottom line. If there's 100,000 buys, we're going to be told it was 400,000, and so on, or 500,000. That's just what it's going to
Yeah, because
be.
we don't
So
know anymore since the way that they're sold. I mean, I
yeah,
guess
we
we
don't
don't get.
there. We never really did, but there was some metrics that some of the really smart people used to figure it out. Now I don't think those. I think you throw those metrics out the window because it's all completely private. There's no more leaks from cable
Yeah.
companies and satellite companies. But so the prelims start at 6 Eastern. A couple of the huge fights that jump out to me early are Jacare Souza and Uriah Hall.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you know, the thing about these undercards is, you got Jacare who's on a little bit of a skid, getting older, but fun fight there. One
Yeah.
thing of note that I looked at is, I mean, when you think of that fight, I mean, you kind of think like, okay, like if Jacare wins, it's going to be by submission. Uriah Hall has never been submitted in his career, so
No, he's he's crafty. He's a crafty one, Uriah Hall.
so that kind of makes it interesting. I think you're gonna in that fight. I feel like it's gonna come down to kind of a cardio battle, and maybe late into the third round, you're gonna find out whoever holds up the best is going to be able to maybe get in a position on the ground, probably of a top position, and dropping some punches is kind of how I see that unfolding. But
I mean,
excited.
I think I wrote about that's one of the 5 fights to watch over. I did an editorial last week when the card was kind of somewhat solid or announced or whatever it was, and it's over at MMAnews.com, and that's one of the fights that I said that's worth a watch, only because, like you said, I mean, Uriah, you think, of course, yes, if it goes to the ground against a guy like Jacare, he's going to get submitted. But like you said, he's been able to survive submissions. He's actually got a couple of submissions of his own, and then of course, with Hall's got those Tekken moves from the video game that he's scored knockouts with. There's oftentimes he has. I mean, he got that win over Musasi, right? That he was kind of the underdog on, and he did it was like a weird low
Yeah.
jumping spinning back kick, and he caught Musasi as he was coming in for a takedown. I mean, who would have saw that coming? But he did it. So that's one of those fights that definitely it's a coin toss. Like you got to watch it. It's going to be worth watching.
Another fight on the prelims that I think I called it with Nolan King about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. Fabricio Verdun and Alexei Olenek, two
Yeah.
older statesmen in the heavyweight division. Verdun making his comeback after a suspension. Uh, it's a grappler's dream fight,
Mm-hmm.
which means we're probably likely to see Verdun win a striking fight. I think Olenek on the feet is pretty rudimentary. Um, Verdun has shown prior to a suspension. I mean, he's been gone a little while now, so we'll see how he's declined in skills over the last couple of years, or how if age completely caught up with him. But
Yeah.
if it's the last Verdun we saw, I think he picks apart Olenek on the feet. I'm hoping it goes to the ground and we see some really good heavyweight transitions, and maybe a crazy submission.
Yeah, man. I mean, I kind of want to see that one happen, but you bring up a good point. I mean, we're doing probably has an edge on the feet, but you never know what time away, uh, especially for the older guys, what it could. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's rest and but they come back fresh and ready to go. I mean, that's the case. Definitely, we're going to see what's up with. He's not an older guy, whatever. He was away for injury when we get into the main card with Dominic Cruz, but it's definitely one of those things that you have to take into consideration. But hey, man, it's one of those ones you just gotta watch it and see it, figure it out, see what happens.
One other prelim, Cowboy Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, rematch from years ago, where
Mm-hmm.
Pettis won in the first round. Um, with these two name guys like this, it's kind of weird to say, but in a sense, this is almost like a loser leaves town match.
Mm.
Cerrone, although it's against Gagey, Ferguson, and McGregor, is on a 3-fight losing streak, and Pettis is on a 2-fight losing streak of his own, to Diaz and Fajeda. Um, so I, I don't know. I mean, with their name value, maybe they don't get cut because they could go to Bellator or they could go do some other stuff. But um, it really is a must win for both of these guys if either of them have any kind of dreams of climbing the ladder and ultimately getting back to the top of a division.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a fight. First of all, I'm surprised that. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I am a little surprised because the initial announcement when they showed the whole card, this was supposed to be the first fight that let us, that started off the pay per view. Then they flipped it. Um, Greg Hardy and Jorgen De Castro is going to be the first fight, and we'll start with them when we do the main card picks. But I don't know, man. I feel like it's a little soon for Cerrone. I know he wants to fight as much as he can as he starts what did he say? He's starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel for his career when he did that interview with ESPN last week. But he also made a really good point that he said that it's a rematch, number one, and he said that he prefers the short notice versus the fight camp stuff, I guess, because there's something mentally that helps him just get to it faster. I guess there's not that much build up, and because sometimes you can build things up in your mind to the point that when you finally get to it, you've kind of beaten yourself, maybe, which is kind of what he hinted at with the McGregor loss. I don't know why most of that interview he did with ESPN focused on that so much when he has this fight in front of him, but that's pretty much kind of what he said. So I was hoping he'd sit out a little while, though. I was hoping we wouldn't see him till the summer, but if he wants to fight and he thinks he can do it, then who's going to stop him?
Yeah, I mean, we know how he likes to have a schedule. So
I think Pettis wins that just because of that, though. By the way, that's what
yeah,
I was leading up to saying.
see, I don't know. I'm actually kind of leaning towards Cowboy having a
Mm,
resurgent fight. I feel like we've written him off at other times in his career, um,
true.
and he's come back. I think Pettis, of all the last 4 fights now he's had, is obviously number 4 in order of I don't know if toughness is the word, but where they're at right now in their careers,
Hmm.
I would say that that's probably accurate. So, um, and Pettis didn't look good against Fajeda. I mean, he got finished. I think it was in the second round
Yeah.
with a submission hold. So, uh, I'm leaning Cowboy, but I think it's gonna be. I think this will actually be a good fight. I think it'll be. Um,
Yeah.
I think I mean it very
Absolutely.
well could be one of the top 2 or 3 fights of the whole card. Uh, but that brings us to the main card.
Yeah. I was laughing as we're both gassy or drinking beers on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Uh, Greg
Maybe
Hardy.
we should do wine next time.
Greg Hardy, Jorgen De Castro opens up the main card. As you bring up on the YouTube here, the wonderful ESPN website with their matchups.
UFC is UFC.com.
UFC.com and
With their accurate stats. Hopefully Matt's gonna. I feel like they might be right though, because
no,
they've had some times
you're
they've had some.
optimistic. You would think that not having an event in 6 weeks, they would have had a chance to update it. But no, they still have Hardy with 1 loss. He's got 2, and
Oh,
they
that's
decide.
right.
And Castro's 6-0 and not 5-0. So
No, there goes that.
we're 0-for-2 on the main card here with them. But I don't know. This is 2 big sluggers. It's hard to really pick this fight. Uh, I I'm gonna go with Greg Hardy. I know that that's not the popular pick. I don't think I've seen anybody pick him to win this fight. Um, I think he'll catch him with something early, and I think either one catches the other one with something early in this fight. But I'm gonna lean Greg Hardy. But it's a coin flip. I mean, you're just gonna have 2 big boys probably just throwing big strikes, and
Yeah.
I don't see this fight going past probably the 2-minute mark of the first round. To be honest.
Oh no, I definitely predict. I mean, there's 2 heavyweight fights on this main card that I don't think we're gonna see the end of. I mean, the final round, all 3 rounds in. But for this one, I'm actually gonna go against you. Officially, I submitted the picks I'm saying here. I submitted to both SureDog.com and MMAnews.com. For this fight, I don't know why. I think I know Hardy might have. Let's see if they have that correct on here, because they do give us. Does he have a reach advantage on him? Do they even give that out on here?
I don't think they have it on there, but I would think he would.
I feel like he does have a reach advantage. Oh, here we go. Yes, he does have a reach advantage. 80 inches versus 74. But we saw in De Castro's last fight that he's able to draw folks in moving backwards to knock out folks that charge in on him, and we're definitely going to get that from Greg Hardy. He also kind of hinted at being worried about his whole asthma situation and all of that stuff too. So who knows if that's on his mind? But if it does go past the first round, cardio is obviously an issue for him. Um, and I think DeCastro might be a decent enough counterpuncher to drop him. So I'm actually going to disagree with you because I submitted my pick officially as Jorgen DeCastro.
What do we got up next?
This fight's definitely going to be one to. I feel like it's going to be this might be fight of a night contender.
Jeremy Stevens versus Kelvin Qatar. Um, I think I think Calvin wins this fight. Uh, I think he's the younger, up and coming fighter. Stevens has had his run a little while back,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, he's kind of been a win one lose one fighter, at least in the UFC. So I think this fight goes to a decision, but I'll take Qatar with the decision win. Um, Probably exciting fight, like you said.
Yeah, no, we're definitely this is one we're both on the same page on for the same reason. I just think I mean Stevens has well he was the only fighter that actually missed what was like 4.5 pounds off. He was off today when he weighed in. Um, but the fight's still going on. I think he's given up 30% of his purse. Was reported by MMA Fighting, but on paper, you know that where one is strong, the other is weak. So they kind of have like a weird yin yang type of thing with them. And I think because not just because of the up and coming thing that you said about Qatar, but I also think that uh just he's got more wins by decision, and I have here in my notes. So he's got more wins by decision, and that's where Steven seems to have picked up most of his losses. So I feel like Qatar could like outwork him or cater, however you say it. I feel like he could outwork him and pull off a decision win. And I don't think it'll be boring. I think it'll be probably one of those fights that's a fight of the night contender.
Yeah, I think it'll be high paced bout, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't necessarily see a finish either way.
yeah. And we got the second the other heavyweight bout that I hinted at, Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik.
This is where we're probably going to have a disagreement. I don't know about the winner, but I think this is going to be a slow heavyweight fight. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, Rosenstrick was basically 2 or 3 seconds away from losing a boring, slow decision to Overeem in his last fight
Mm-hmm.
before he landed a big punch. We've seen Ngannou do it with Lewis, where they put in a snoozer. I think you're going to have, it's hard to have you can't have a firefight if one fighter is being cautious, and I think Rosenstruck kind of shows that. I mean, he's got the technical striking, but I feel like he's going to be a little bit more. I don't think he's going to get in there and just start slugging it out with Ngannou. I think that would be a huge mistake. If he does, I think Ngannou's going to floor him. I do think Ngannou's going to win, but I think it's going to be a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just going to be because he's going to be the fighter coming forward, trying to push the action. He might not even land more punches when it's all said and done, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to look like the aggressive fighter. I hope that's not the case, but I just have a feeling whenever we have a heavyweight fight where we think it's just going to be a damn barn burner, and it lends to not be. So I hope that's not the case, but I'm going to take Ngannou by a kind of a lackluster decision win, um, which will then fuel Cormier, Miocic heavy talk.
Mm. Well, I mean, we're definitely not in disagreement for this one because I actually have Ngannou winning. I just feel like uh, he's got a higher pedigree of opponents as far as like the guys he's fought against, and either win or lose. You know, he's just he's done better, and his record. I mean, he does have I think he's got two submission wins to his record. I can't go by this because I know it's wrong, but I know he's submitted guys with Kimuras in the past. I feel like he just might be the more well-rounded guy. So yeah, I mean, I haven't picked to win. Obviously, we want to see a knockout. I feel like we might get a knockout, but I'm not going to be surprised if it goes to a decision, I'm not going to be as surprised. And if a submission happens, I'm leaning towards Ngannou for that as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Co-main event of the evening, bantamweight world title fight: Henry Cejudo versus the returning, in my opinion, greatest of all time, bantamweight Dominic Cruz. Cruz has been out of action since his loss to Cody Garbrandt uh, nearly 4 years ago, or 4 years ago. Uh, it's interesting. I mean, that loss to Garbrandt was his first loss in about an 8-year period.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, you look at his record; he's you know he's 22-2. He lost to Garbrandt, and then he has a loss early in his career to Uriah Faber. Two guys who are no jokes, and especially at the time when Garbrandt won, um, he was on top of the world. Uh, I it, I feel like if we're just looking at a straight up fight, I would go with Cejudo. But part of me thinks that like Cejudo is really a flyweight, and
Mm.
although he has the bantamweight belt, I feel like he's starting to flirt with, and he got it in there's no flukes, but he got it. He didn't have a scrap to get it. He landed something quick and got a finish uh, in mere seconds, really. Um, so I don't think he really ever saw the effects of and that of. Am I? No, I'm not thinking right. Dillashaw went down. Who did? Oh, he beat Marias. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He beat Marias for the vacant title, but you know, I in a fight where he was taking it a little bit early. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Cruz. I think Cruz somehow pulls this off. I don't know if it's good for the division with Cruz's injury situation constantly happening, but I think Cruz being a legitimate bantamweight is going to give Cejudo some issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think assuming we have anything near what we were used to seeing with Cruz, I think we're going to see some good movement, and I think he'll frustrate Cejudo and outstrike him to a decision win.
It's funny that you're saying that because that's pretty much how T.J. Dillashaw said he saw it winning. He made it. They asked him obviously his prediction, having been the former bantamweight champion, because and fighting, but having fought both guys, even though he fought Cejudo at 125, but he pretty much said the same thing because of his awkward style that he can outstrike him. He can pull off a decision win, and Dominic Cruz is definitely the fighter I'm a fan of, but something about the win Cejudo got over Marias is what's making me lean towards Cejudo because yeah, he was taking a beating, he almost lost it early on, but he weathered the storm. Then we found out afterward that he had the ankle injury, and then he tore up his shoulder in that fight as well. But he somehow he managed to win with finish Marias, and I think that's just a testament to what separates Olympic athletes from other athletes, and I honestly think that's Cejudo's edge, even if he's not that, he's not like, and I know he has a split decision win over Demetrius Johnson, but he's definitely not the masterful MMA fighter that Cruz and Johnson are, but I think his tenacity that comes from his competitive spirit, having been an Olympian, is his true edge in this fight, and I actually have him picked to win it. So that's what I submitted officially. So I got to stick to it.
The good news is, looking at our YouTube stream here, the UFC has decided to not bother putting any of the winning percentages of Dominic Cruz. Uh, according to them, he's never won a fight by TKO, never won a fight by submission, never won a decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. That's funny.
And,
Yeah.
and 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 they're only what, 4 fights short on his record.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, he's 22-2.
Hey,
I mean,
at least they're testing. They got 1,200 COVID-19 tests.
Jesus, they haven't updated his record
And yeah. Yeah.
since he came back and fought Mazzagatti after the first injury. Um, yeah, well, whatever. But should be. I think it's a cool fight. Kind of weird seeing Cruz get this fight, but way it unfolded. You know, I'm looking forward to it. And Cruz is old school, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always root for the old school guys. deep down.
Yeah.
Main
But
event
here we
time.
go.
Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, uh, uh, just bleed dream for this fight. Uh, I don't think there's going to be any lack of blood. Uh,
No.
I, I initially thought, oh, Ferguson. I've changed it. I think Gaethje catches him. I think Gaethje puts him down. I do think that there could be some quick stoppages on this card with the hesitation to have somebody get beat to a pulp and then sent to a Florida hospital.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe that's not obviously that's not going to be publicly said, but I can't imagine that's not a little bit on somebody's mind, of a referee's mind. I don't know who's refereeing it. If it's Herb Dean, there's definitely a good chance we'll get an early stoppage. Um, but I'm going to go with Gagey. I think Ferguson's the better fighter, but Ferguson also likes to get or doesn't like to get hit, but he gets hit. Uh,
Hmm.
Gagey hits you, and you usually aren't around to take too many more. Um, so
Hmm.
that's the difference. Ferguson got hit by Pettis, got hit by Landau. Uh, I think Gagey clips him, and I think he puts him down. And whether he's able to put him out completely or we get kind of a ref stepping in, I think Gagey gets it done in the first round and a half.
Yeah, well, Gaethje's given himself the first 3 rounds. I mean, he's promised us, at least the first 3 rounds of pure hell, 3 or 4 rounds of hell for Ferguson. I mean, in all honesty, outside of his skill set with the leg kicks and the power he brings, and you know, it's just, you know, when booking fights with Justin Gaethje, I always imagine the opponent side, that scene in the first Rocky when Apollo is trying to get that look for it when Apollo's trainer's looking for when he's looking for an opponent for him, and he kind of pulls Apollo to the side when Apollo picks Rocky, and he says, "Look at, I seen this man. He took a beating for X amount of rounds, and I was like, and he just kept coming. You don't want a man like this in your life, you know." And the Gaethje's that guy. Gaethje's the guy that's like nobody expects him to win, but I mean, and I honestly think he probably, I mean, he cares because he wants to win. He wants to be a champion in the UFC, but which is why he took the fight on the 18th and still stuck around for now. But he's just one of those guys that it's win or lose. Like Ferguson won't be the Ferguson. If Ferguson wins, he's not going to be the same afterward. Look at all the guys that beat him. They soon, losses came to them soon after. I think Dustin Poirier is probably the best case scenario. But if you look at like Eddie Alvarez and the other guys I mean, it's only Eddie Alvarez and Poirier that hold wins over Gaethje because he was undefeated before he got to the UFC. I mean, a lot of folks don't know that he was a lightweight title holder at the World Series of Fighting too. You and I both agree, Justin Gaethje, man. I actually think he can get a TKO off of this, probably before 5 rounds. I mean, I'll give him the 3-4 rounds, but I mean, I think he can get it done, especially the longer it goes, as long as his cardio is good, which is something he said. But if it goes 4 and 5, if it goes to 4 and 5, then I'll be, I could see Ferguson pulling something off there, but he's going to take a lot of damage if it gets that, if the fight goes that long. But either way, man, I mean, I've never bet against Justin Gaethje. He actually won me a lot of money one night. What was it? The fight against who did he beat? I forget who it was. One of his wins in the UFC. Um, but he won me a lot of money, and because he was always an underdog. He's always an underdog, and when he wins, he pays. So
Well, I mean, the UFC, we could just do a whole podcast on this comedy of a website. According to the UFC, he has 86% of his wins by knockout, which is tremendous. The only thing is, if you add up his TKOs, his submission, and his decisions, he has 101% of his fights. So they don't even add up to 100%. So maybe they gave him an extra percent and decided to give Cruz 0, uh, but go back up real
Listen,
quick.
we for our listeners and viewers, which
Wow.
one?
Uh, d- Still has zero. Never. Gaethje still doesn't have a single takedown in his MMA in his UFC career. Well, according to this website, I don't think I can remember him ever doing a takedown though. So
Well, he
that
really doesn't. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely. Did that just change? Uh,
they're
um,
listening. They're listening. They're updating it as we go through. But yeah, I think it's going to be a barn burner. I don't think there's any way that this is a boring fight. Uh, mean, I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. Got some burgers to throw on the grill. Gonna do it as traditionally
let's
as
get that out of
possible.
here.
Uh, but man, looking
Yeah,
forward to it. Hopefully
me too.
everything goes smooth for the next you know, what 11 and a half hours till the pay-per-view time at this time.
Yeah.
Uh, look forward to talking to you next week about the results.
Yeah, man, it's definitely going to be a good one. I mean, whatever your opinion is, I mean, I think my mom is actually. It's Mother's Day weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I think my mom is actually looking forward to these fights because nothing else is on, and she doesn't even like fights. So, uh, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. We'll definitely be have a lot to talk about. I mean, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm glad we got some fights going this weekend.
Follow the podcast on Twitter at Combat Hour, on Instagram at Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. You can follow me at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter and Carb Beerzol on Instagram. Ed, until next week, man. Hang in there the rest of the weekend. Enjoy the fights.
You too, sir.